Real quick before we get into today's video, just want to thank all the people over on Patreon for all their support, because without their help, the upgraded content that you see on the channel, that you really see in the video essays and a few of the lore discussions would not be possible without their help. But over on the Patreon, you get sneak peeks of videos months in advance. Patrons also get priority on the Q&As. Every 3 months we do an anime and manga haul, and I give away a lot of good goodies in that. And it's also just really cool to talk to you guys in the DMs, and if some of you guys have theories that you want me to talk about on the channel, obviously I will talk about your theories. Just send them to me over on the Patreon. But with that being said, let's get into the review. Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another review for Boruto Naruto Next Generations, episode 246. And now that episode 246 is done in the books, man, we got a lot to talk about out of this episode. There's actually quite a bit to unpack. We got 2 characters that died. One of them died in a tear-jerking fashion, and the other one died in what can only be described as being the biggest I told you so moment in the entire franchise. Now, we also have to discuss something that a few people have sent me DMs saying that the anime made a plot hole when it comes to the character of Sarada, in particular when it comes to a sharingan. So I will be addressing that as well, because it does look like there's some information that is being forgotten when it comes to the sharingan, in particular the Mangekyo sharingan. So with that being said, let's go ahead and back things up and get right into the episode review itself. So I like how the episode picks up exactly where the last one left off, where we see Kagura and the build up towards what looks like it's going to be his death. And like I said last week, I said that I did kind of feel like he was going to die, simply for the fact that Sarada and Iwabe, neither one of them is in particular very good at medical ninjutsu, and having to heal a wound like that was going to be a bit of a stretch. And in last week's episode preview, you did have the line where Hebi Ichigo said, hey, why isn't the wound closing? Why hasn't the bleeding stopped? That just goes back to their lack of experience when it comes to medical ninjutsu. So for Iwabe and for Sarada, that's probably going to make them get better at medical ninjutsu. Now we have to talk about that moment where Boruto rages out and you see Funamushi. He's bragging as Kagura's body falls to the ground. You got that big hole in his chest that spreads closer towards his heart, which is a bit of foreshadowing. If you read the manga, you know exactly why that hole in the chest is some really big foreshadowing for a certain character. However, what I like right here is that when Boruto snaps, that karma just activates instantly. And the way that they handled this is they did it once everybody else is preoccupied, because like I've said in a few comments, I haven't directly addressed this in a video, but when it comes to Boruto's karma, that's supposed to be top secret. There aren't supposed to be a bunch of people that know about it. If you don't already know about karma, you're not supposed to know about its existence. There are still people on this battlefield, in particular Denki and the rest of them, who do not know about Boruto's karma. And so Boruto not using karma for an extended period of time, number one, that makes sense. And number two, if Boruto starts using a 20-hit combination attack, or even a 12-hit combination attack, a 5-hit combination attack, now you got issues when it comes to proper scaling. That would have created bigger issues. So I'm fine with that sequence being short. I think it was a bit overkill to have Boruto send him flying all the way across the battlefield a long distance, but only because of how slow his body was moving across there. I thought the animation in terms of how like the clothes and everything was flapping, I thought that was fine, but I really feel like that should have been sped up more. You could have greater conveyed that Boruto sent him from the middle of the battlefield all the way towards where the actual city was, because if you look at the frames when Boruto's blitzing him, you really get the sense that Funamushi is a great distance away from any of the buildings in the background. That makes perfect sense. You want to demonstrate that karma gives Boruto an absurd power boost. I understand that. Even suppressed Boruto, having him send him that far into the background makes a lot of sense. Just slowing it down like this, that necessarily wasn't the best choice artistically. But I mean, Anime Blue did tell us over on Twitter last week after the last episode, like, yes, Studio Pierrot is gonna be doing the episode, but don't expect any Sakura level animation, which is why I kept my expectations in check for this one. If you want to learn more about animation and the staff listings, Anime Blue is a great account to follow. What I will say though is that in the moments after that, I like how Boruto immediately cuts his karma off. So we get the confirmation that right now Boruto in the anime is able to activate and cut off karma at will, and he had enough sense of mind that he cut it off before anybody could get a really good look at it. The only person who really saw it was Funamushi, and for the most part, Funamushi doesn't know what he's looking at. So that in itself is fine. If he would have used it for an extended period of time, he would have violated the order that karma is supposed to be top secret information. Now, once we got to that moment where they start using medical ninjutsu and Kagura was saying that he's not going to make it, and he basically start giving out his last will, he thanks Bunten for sticking with him to the very end. He gives Hebi Ichigo the letter that's supposed to go to Chojuro that is going to have Chojuro release the members of the Seven Ninja Sorcerer in the Mist to help him out. So Bunten, Kyoho, and Hebi Ichigo has a moment where she basically says, I don't deserve this because I attempted to kill you. And Kagura's like, yo, it's all good, fam. You didn't go through with it at the end. You didn't leave us. You came back. You earned this release. And I like how that release itself is covered in blood. And so what we're seeing right here is essentially you're going to have those three, likely with Bunten taking Kagura's place when it comes to leading that new Seven Ninja Sorcerer in the Mist, and whatever they end up doing with Shizuma in the future, you can bet that Shizuma is going to make a passing line about Kagura dying, and that's probably going to piss off Bunten the most. So I like what we're seeing right here in terms of future buildup. Now, the huge thing that people have a problem with is, why didn't Sarada awaken her Mangekyo Sharingan when Kagura died? Now, one of you guys kind of pointed this out on the Discord last week when I said, like, yo, they probably got to be careful with Kagura. Because I said, hey, like with Kagura dying, I said, like, it depends on how close they are. And one of you guys kind of pointed out, like, yo, Kagura and Sarada, they're not that close. And I went back, and this last week I rewatched the Hidden Mist Field Trip arc, and I can agree with that. They're not close enough for Kagura's death to awaken Sarada's Mangekyo Sharingan. Despite what some people believe, you can actually jump from a 2-tomo to a Mangekyo Sharingan. Go back, reread the manga chapter around chapter 604, where when you get Obito's flashback and you get Ren's death is 604 to 608. I believe that's what the chapters are, but I'm doing that off the top of my head, so it's somewhere in that ballpark. But what I will say is that either reread the manga or go back to that scene in the anime. Obito directly jumps from a 2-tomo Sharingan. The eye immediately evolves to a 3-tomo, and then it immediately evolves to a Mangekyo Sharingan. So it's not impossible to go from a 2-tomo to a 3. You just go through the 3-tomo awakening and the Mangekyo right away at the same time. Now, with that being said, Sarada and Kagura, they're not close enough for his death to awaken her Mangekyo. That'd have been somebody like, say, Mitsuki or Boruto or Chocho. That would have been enough to awaken that Mangekyo, but they're not close enough, so that's fine. That's the whole reason why during the Warring States era, you didn't have a bunch of Uchiha running around with Mangekyo Sharingan in the Mangekyo Sharingan's already rare within the clan. It's rare for a reason. So I like what we're seeing right here when it comes to basically Sarada's reaction. Now, when we transition over to the Tenma part, I like how the anime gives you a little bit of understanding when it comes to Tenma's place with the hierarchy of this entire Funato clan, because based off of the episode summaries that we got, the promotional spoilers basically, it said that Tenma looked at Arayumi like his father-in-law. And so I thought that meant, okay, father-in-law, clearly that means that he was betrothed or he potentially married somebody like Siren. I thought that that might have been the situation we were in. That's not the case. What ends up happening is via the flashback, after Tenma and Isari have their back and forth on what they should do, Tenma's like, yo, if we go on that ship right now, we fight Chojuro, we can end this whole battle right now. We don't need to solve for time any longer. And Isari tells him, if the two of us go on that ship, the only thing that we could hope for is essentially mutual destruction. And so that did two things. Before going into the flashback, it lets you know that Tenma by himself could not take on somebody like Chojuro, and then in order to even stalemate Chojuro, it had to be Tenma and Isari. So we get a clear understanding of how strong both of these characters are. And what's fascinating about this is that this is them comparing themselves to a version of Chojuro from years ago in the timeline when the Arayumi rebellion first ended up falling apart, which means that they don't even stand a chance together against this much stronger Chojuro, who has since then taken on somebody like Kinshiki. Granted, he didn't do it by himself, but there's been a clear power up. In order for them as a duo to have a chance to stalemate somebody like Chojuro who's gotten this strong, they would have had a significant increase in skill, similar to how Sarada went from being unable to stitch together a teddy bear doing the medical ninjutsu training to her going to Inojin at the end of the episode and asking Inojin to work with her and getting better at medical ninjutsu, which has led to her even feeling confident enough to attempt to try and stitch together Kagura's wounds, even though she couldn't do so and Iwabe couldn't do so. That's still progression. Tenma and Isari would have needed progression of that level, that drastic, to even have a chance to even hope to be able to stalemate, and that's a best case scenario, so I'm fine with that. And this same Chojuro defeats Tenma like it's nothing. He only has to use a few jutsu and a few sword slashes and Tenma's taken out, and that's exactly how the fight should have gone. Tenma did not need to have an extended battle with Chojuro because he does not scale to that level. He was struggling with Kagura and he was struggling with a Kawaki who doesn't know how to pull out his full power yet. Tenma and Funamushi should have been taken out very quickly, like how the anime had them taken out very quickly. And so what I like also is when we get Tenma's flashback, we find out that the whole reason why he looks at Arayumi like a father-in-law is essentially Arayumi was the one that took him in. He didn't know his birth parents. He had to raise himself, essentially going from island to island. And when Arayumi shows up and kills the people that was on the island that he was staying at, that's when he ends up joining the Funato clan pirates. And that's when Arayumi begins to start overseeing his training and basically adopting him into the family. I thought that that part was fine. I also like that flashback where we see Arayumi, because if you have read the Naruto novels, which I know a lot of you guys have not, but like I've been saying ever since I've been discussing Boruto's anime, the anime is littered with plot points that a lot of you guys think are random plot points that are directly set up in the light novels, where the anime is just cashing them in. The turmoil that's going on in the land of water, it's been hinted at as far back as the light novels after Naruto's manga ended. So the novel's set after chapter 699 of Naruto, but before chapter 700, which is the chapter where Boruto paints the faces of the Hokage monument. A lot of the stuff that we're seeing right now with this turmoil in the Hidden Mist Village, there are passing lines in those novels that directly reference the tension being built up for scenes like this. So you have stuff that even as far back as when Mei was the Mizukage, they had stuff that they were having to try and put out. The Boruto anime is just building on that stuff. And my good buddy over on Twitter, America to Japan, has highlighted some of those passages right there. They've got a thread that goes over some of the references that we've seen in the Boruto anime so far. Now, I will say this as well. That moment when Boruto's like, yo, we need to go into the camp. We need to go ahead and just take everybody out. Kawaki's like, yo, I want all this smoke too. It's time to start catching bodies. I've been saying, like, why we ain't killing everybody. Boruto gets right in his feelings, and Sarada's the one that keeps a cool head. And you see why everybody picks Sarada to become the leader of this unit, because essentially Sarada's the one that keeps a cool head and says, I'm just as pissed off as you are, but we can't just charge in there. We got to go in with a strategy. We have to reassess the table right now. And that's the correct thing to do, because even after they get to a moment where they elect Sarada as the new leader and she's acknowledged by everybody in the room except for Kawaki. Kawaki's got his eyes closed, not looking at her. But while that foreshadowing for Kawaki versus Sarada, which is important, if you read the manga, you know why. However, what you also get is Boruto after the fact. He's still so pissed off. He's punching debris made out of brick and he's shattering it with his fist. And that's when Team 7 goes out and confronts him and says, like, are you really able to use karma without any type of risk? And In particular, it's Kawaki who's really grilling him on this. And what I like about this is that this is also some more setup for stuff that's going on in the manga. Boruto is willing to take those pills. He's willing to trust what Amato's telling him. Kawaki isn't necessarily on board with that. If you read the manga, you know exactly where this is going. So I like seeing that right there, and I like how you do get that bit of setup. I mean, overall, in terms of story progression, this was cool in terms of the episode now. But what I want to know from you guys is, how did you feel about Kagura's death? Do you think that the death worked? And then the second question I have is, how do you feel about this arc killing off 2 characters in the same episode? Let me know down in the comment section below. So always, guys, if you like anything I had to say, don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Have an awesome day, guys.